Most people wouldn't think twice about a spilled cup of coffee. But for one tired waitress, it was an opportunity to show kindness, even though it cost her out of her own pocket. What she didn't know was that the customer sitting at her table wasn't just any ordinary man. He was a billionaire in disguise. And that small act of compassion? It would set off a chain of events that completely transformed her life. Daniel Brooks wasn't just any man walking into that diner. He was one of the wealthiest men in the country. His face had been on magazine covers, his name tied to skyscrapers, tech companies, and charities. But dressed in a simple shirt and slacks, without his usual bodyguards or assistants, no one recognized him that afternoon. For once, Daniel wanted something ordinary. No fine dining. No private chef. Just a place where no one knew his name. A place where he could be a man, not a billionaire. The diner was nothing fancy. A neon open sign flickered in the window. The smell of fried bacon and fresh coffee filled the air. The floor creaked with each step. A small bell above the door chimed as Daniel entered. It reminded him of simpler times, before the fortune, before the pressure, before life became about deals and deadlines. He found a booth by the window, where sunlight cut through dusty blinds and landed across his table. He sat down, exhaling, almost relieved. For the first time in a long while, he felt invisible. And then he saw her. Emily Carter, mid-20s, wearing a diner uniform that had clearly seen better days. Her hair tied back in a ponytail, strands falling loose as she hurried from table to table. She moved quickly, balancing trays and coffee pots. But what caught Daniel's attention wasn't her speed, it was her presence. She smiled at every customer. Not the fake, forced smile of someone working for tips, but a real one. A tired smile, yes, but genuine. Even when a customer complained. Even when a toddler spilled juice all over the floor. Even when her hands trembled slightly from exhaustion. When she finally reached Daniel's table, she greeted him like she greeted everyone else, with kindness. "Hi there," she said warmly, her voice steady despite the chaos behind her. "Welcome in. What can I get started for you today?" Daniel looked up at her and for a moment, forgot to answer. He wasn't used to being treated this way, like just another person. Not a CEO. Not a billionaire. Daniel. He ordered a sandwich and coffee. Simple. But as he sat back, his eyes kept following Emily. She reminded him of something he hadn't seen in a long time. People who worked hard not just for themselves, but for others. Daniel had no idea, sitting there in that quiet diner, that this small decision, this ordinary afternoon, was about to lead to an extraordinary change in both of their lives. Because in just a few moments, an accident was about to happen. A simple mistake. And the way Emily chose to respond would set into motion a chain of events that neither of them could have ever imagined. The diner wasn't busy anymore. The lunch rush had passed, leaving only a few scattered customers sipping coffee or chatting quietly. Daniel picked up his mug, lost in thought, flipping through a small notebook where he sometimes scribbled ideas. His mind drifted to the pressure waiting for him outside these four walls. Shareholder meetings, international deals, never-ending headlines. And then it happened. His hand slipped. The mug tipped. Coffee spilled across the table, dripping onto his lap and the floor. "Oh no," Daniel muttered, fumbling with napkins, his face flushing with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry. I should've." Before he could finish, Emily appeared. She knelt down immediately, a rag in hand, wiping the floor with practiced speed. But her voice wasn't annoyed or impatient. It was calm, almost comforting. "Hey, don't worry about it," she said softly, looking up at him with a smile. "These things happen all the time." Daniel froze. He wasn't used to that reaction. Usually, people rolled their eyes, sighed, or looked irritated when mistakes happened. But Emily? She brushed it off as though it was nothing. She cleared away the mess, took the empty mug, and disappeared behind the counter. A few minutes later, she returned with a fresh cup of steaming coffee. She placed it gently in front of him. "This one's on me," she said with a quiet smile. Daniel frowned. "But you don't have to do that. It was my fault." Emily shook her head. "It's fine. I know what it's like to have a rough day. Sometimes a small act of kindness can make it better. So please, just enjoy it. Daniel stared at her, speechless. Most waitresses would have shrugged it off and moved on. But Emily didn't just forgive his mistake, she gave more than she had to. What Daniel didn't know was that the free coffee came out of her own tips, money she relied on just to get by. But Emily didn't hesitate. To her, kindness was worth more than the couple of dollars she gave up. As Daniel sipped the coffee, he couldn't help but wonder, why? Why would someone who clearly worked so hard, who looked so tired, go out of her way to be kind like this? His curiosity grew. And soon he would learn the truth about Emily's life. A truth that would not only surprise him, but deeply move him. The diner began to quiet down, and Emily finally had a brief moment to breathe. Daniel, still intrigued, gently struck up a conversation. "You know," he said slowly, "you didn't have to do what you did. Covering that coffee. Most people wouldn't." Emily smiled faintly, wiping her hands on her apron. "Maybe, but I think the world's a better place when we give without expecting anything back." Her words hit Daniel harder than he expected. So, he pressed a little further. "Do you always work this hard? You've been running non-stop since I got here." Emily laughed softly. "This is just one of my jobs. I wait tables here, but I also work nights at a grocery store. And on weekends, I babysit when I can. It's exhausting, but it's what I have to do." Daniel tilted his head. "What keeps you going?" Emily hesitated, her eyes softening. She sat at the edge of his booth, lowering her voice. "My younger brother. He's still in high school. After our mom passed away a few years ago, it's just been the two of us. I promised her I'd take care of him. Make sure he has a chance at a better life." Her voice cracked slightly, but she kept talking. "I pay the rent, the bills, his school supplies. Some nights, I barely sleep, but I remind myself, it's worth it, because he deserves a chance to succeed." Daniel listened intently. He could feel the sincerity in her words. But then, Emily's eyes lit up in a different way. "I do have a dream," she admitted quietly. "My mom loved to bake. Cakes, pies, bread. Her kitchen was always full of warmth and sweetness. She taught me everything she knew before she passed. Baking has always been my safe place, the thing that calms me down no matter what's going on. One day, I want to open a bakery. A small one. Nothing fancy. Just a place where people can feel at home. A place where I can honor her memory." Her smile faded slightly. "But right now, that dream feels impossible. Between bills, rent, and taking care of my brother, I can't even save a little for it. So for now, it stays a dream." Daniel sat back in silence. In her eyes, he saw both exhaustion and hope. She wasn't asking for pity. She wasn't asking for help. She was simply telling her truth. And in that moment, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years: admiration. But Emily had no idea who she was really speaking to. And soon, she was about to find out that her kindness had reached the heart of someone who had the power to change her life forever. When Daniel left the diner that afternoon, he didn't reveal who he was. He simply thanked Emily, left a generous tip, though far less than he was capable of, and walked out quietly. To Emily, he was just another customer. Nothing more. But in the days that followed, something happened she never expected. Emily received a phone call from a local foundation. A grant had been set up in her name. The funds were enough not only to open her bakery but also to cover her brother's school expenses. At first, she thought it was a scam. "This can't be real," she whispered, staring at the paperwork. "Why would anyone do this for me?" But then came the shocking truth. The grant had been arranged by Daniel Brooks, the billionaire. The man who had sat in her diner just days earlier, sipping coffee like an ordinary customer. Her hands trembled. Her heart raced. She remembered how humble he seemed, how he never once mentioned who he was. And now, here she was, holding proof that he had seen something in her worth believing in. Determined to thank him, Emily gathered her courage and visited his office downtown. The building towered above her, all glass and steel, a world away from her little diner. She felt small stepping into the lobby, out of place among the suits and polished floors. But she pressed on. When she finally stood before Daniel, she could hardly hold back tears. "You didn't just give me money," she said, her voice breaking. "You gave me a chance. A chance to live my dream, to create something lasting, to change my life and my brother's." Daniel smiled gently. "Emily, your kindness reminded me of something I had forgotten. True wealth isn't measured in what we keep, but in what we give. That day, you gave me something priceless. I simply wanted to return it." But neither of them knew then that this was only the beginning. Because what Emily chose to do with that gift would go on to inspire far more people than either of them ever imagined. Months later, Emily Carter's dream became reality. On a quiet corner of town stood her bakery, brick walls painted a warm cream color, windows glowing with soft light, the smell of bread and pastries filling the air. A handwritten sign above the door read, "Carter's Comforts." It quickly became more than just a bakery. It became a gathering place, a safe haven. Customers didn't just come for cakes or pies. They came for the feeling, for the warmth Emily poured into every loaf, every cookie, every cup of coffee. And Emily didn't forget where she came from. She began hiring others who were struggling, single mothers, students, even a man who had once been homeless. She gave them steady work, fair wages, and dignity. She gave them the same chance that Daniel had given her. Every so often, Daniel visited quietly, slipping into a corner booth. He watched with pride as customers lined up, as employees laughed together, as Emily's bakery flourished. He never made a show of it. He didn't need to. Just seeing it was enough. And Emily? She never forgot the lesson Daniel taught her. That kindness, no matter how small, is never wasted. Her choice to pay for a spilled coffee had planted a seed. And that seed grew into a dream fulfilled, a community strengthened, and lives transformed. And that's the message for all of us. We may never know the impact of one small act of kindness. But sometimes what feels like a little gesture can end up changing someone's entire future. This story reminds us that kindness is never wasted. It can change lives in ways we never expect. What did you think of Emily's journey? Would you have done the same in her shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs a little inspiration today. Because remember, one small act of kindness might be the very thing that transforms someone's future. And remember, we're not just telling stories. We're changing lives.